What's going on, everybody? TNF Podcast. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Click on that bell for notifications. All right, we got upcoming shows for you. We got Carl Severson from Good Fight Entertainment, Ferret Records, and the band Nora. That's going to be on the 22nd of September, which is next Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And then we've got Chris and Steve from Fire is Murder. That's going to be on the 29th of September at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. All right. So my next guest today, actually known this guy for a while. We came from the same like music scene up in Statesville, North Carolina, along with some of my other friends. He's been playing for quite some time. He just had a band that he recently kind of resurrected within the past few years, and it's pretty awesome. Like the music is incredible. I was blown away. I was like, holy shit, I can't even believe this is the same band, But incredible, good music going, and a great guy. Ladies and gentlemen, Greg Shields. What's going on, man?
Hey, John. Good to see you, man. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you, man. So what's new in your world?
Well, this is my second podcast ever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, talking to Lord Nelson was the first time. So I've had a little bit of practice now.
Nice.
So yeah, but things are going good. Album dropped August 16th, and so far it's gone pretty well.
Awesome. And I checked out the label that it was the People of Punk or whatever, and man, there were some like releases on there that I was like, whoa, like these are like
Right.
heavy hitters. Like these are some names. I was like, that's awesome, And has that kind of like, have you gotten any more exposure or recognition as a result of the label?
Yeah, I would say so. When I first kind of brought this back, I didn't have any idea how to release music in this day and age. The last time that I did this, we had CDs pressed and sold them at our shows.
Right.
Usually somebody's girlfriend was selling them at your table. So when I reached out to a friend of mine, whose name is Juan, who I had done some editing work for 5 or 6 years ago, and because I was asking him, like, how do I release music in 2023? I just had no idea. And come to find out, he was co-owner of People of Punk Rock Records.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so he heard it. I sent him a few songs from the West Broad EP, and he was like, yeah, man. He's like, this is pretty good. Why don't you just let us release this? And I was like, okay. That was much easier than it was 25 years ago when it was
Sure.
like sending press kits through snail mail and trying to get somebody to listen to your stuff. And that happened over Facebook instant messaging. So
wow, how about that?
It's a different world.
I remember back in the day, there were rumors that Splitcast was talking to like Vagrant Records and like what was it, Fat Records or something. I heard something about that in passing.
Yeah, Fat Records was probably a rumor.
Okay.
I think we did actually get something back from Vagrant that just said, we like what we've heard, but not ready to make a decision on anything. We heard back from like Bulletproof Music, and then Betty Rocket was, I don't know if you remember Betty Rocket.
The Christian label.
It was a West Coast Christian label out in
Blaster the Rocket Man.
Santa Cruz, yeah. And
yeah.
We had developed a pretty good relationship with them just by way of long distance phone calls and emails. I mean, that was the extent of communication back then. And they were planning to sign us. We had appeared on one of their compilations, and we were really gearing up for this, and we thought this was going to be our chance to get signed. That was what the dream was back then. And one setback kind of led to another. They wanted us to hop into a studio to test out to make sure they were going to be okay with the quality. So we like jumped into a studio and tried to record 3 songs in one day, and we just really didn't do that good of a job. I think we had played a bunch of recent shows. My voice was tired. We weren't that tight, but I was like, this is just a demo. Hopefully he'll see that, we'll do a better job once we go back to do the real thing. And when he heard it, he was like, yeah, we're not gonna be able to release this. So after that just kind of took the wind out of our sails. And eventually the the communication between us and the label faded. And like I mentioned the other day when I was talking to Lord Nelson, if you don't hold somebody's attention long enough, then eventually it'll divert to somebody else. And that's just kind of what happened. And then
Right.
kind of unraveled from there.
Well, and that's a difficult task too, to do like 3 songs in what, one day?
Yeah, we had about 10 hours or so. And we were,
You got to be a real machine to get that done, you know?
yeah. And it wasn't good. It wasn't
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Well, I've been there before, did like a slipshod recording that we had to do in about like a weekend, and it sucked,
Yeah.
so I sympathize with you there.
Yeah.
Let's go back a little bit and kind of talk about, your roots and where you come from, and, kind of how you discovered music and, punk rock. Did you grow up with like, and I stole this question from Nelson actually. Did you grow up in like a musical family, or did you have like, friends or family members that played, and like, how did that seg into punk rock eventually? How did you kind of go from, we'll just say like mainstream music into like punk rock?
Yeah. So there are musicians in my family. My grandfather on my mom's side was a phenomenal guitar player. He did like the check picking style, thumb and finger style guitar, and he was kind of just a whiz. Like he did it by ear. Didn't read music. He also played the piano by ear. I think and then it through him to my uncle, my mom's brother, was also pretty much had the same gift. And then it seems like that all kind of funneled down into me as far as having the I don't know, just that kind of coming inherent to me when I was a young child. Music seemed to grab me, and I really started out, I guess, around 4 or 5 years old, just kind of picking things out on the piano. And my parents noticed, like, he's playing like things that I'd heard in a commercial or something playing around the house. So they signed me up for piano lessons, which I took for several years. But because I wanted to play everything by ear, it was really frustrating for me to sit down and try to, learn the theory and learn the notes. And
Is that how you typically play, is by ear?
yeah, yeah,
Wow. Good
that's
man. I do too. So
it's all I can do.
yeah.
And my kids are both taking piano now, and they try to ask me for help. I'm like, you're on your own. Like, I don't know what that means. So they're like, is this
G
an
clef,
F? I'm like, I don't know. It could be.
staccato note. I
Yeah.
don't know.
So piano, I guess, was my primary instrument up until I was about 12 or 13 years old. My grandfather, he showed me just how to make basic chords on an acoustic guitar. He taught me G, C, D, E, just the main chords.
Sure.
And so that once my hands were finally big enough around 13, like I got my first guitar, which was a guitar that a 13-year-old didn't have any business having. It was like this Gretsch hollow body that he had, yeah, it was probably a $2,000 guitar. And that ironically is like what I wrote my first punk rock song on, was on that like Gretsch hollow body that I had no business. I didn't know anything about guitars. I just knew that he was letting me, he wasn't giving it to me, but he was letting me practice with it.
Right.
As far as how that led me towards punk rock, I'm not entirely sure. That's probably just a product of where I grew up, and you're from the same place. I liked guitar music in general, but before I really had a musical taste of my own, it was just radio stuff, I guess. I liked Aerosmith, and I even liked Michael Jackson, even though that's not really guitar music, but
Banger. Well, I mean, if you think about like, Beat It, I mean, that's Eddie Van
yeah,
Halen.
yeah.
So
So, and that's really when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old. I didn't really have a musical identity yet or anything. And then when Dookie came out from Green Day in
right.
1994, that was a game changer, because I'm like, what are these ginormous guitars?
Yeah.
And I'm like, how are they making that sound? Because I didn't, all I could play was standard chords. I didn't know anything about what power chords were.
Right.
But I'm like, I know for sure that that is not just, you know, he's not just playing a G chord or a C chord. Like he's doing something different. Um, so I got into that kind of music just because it was loud and it was fast, and I thought it was fun. And then kind of growing up in the late 90s with the skateboard culture, punk rock just goes hand in hand with that. And yeah, I guess that's kind of how it started.
Right on. And I've always been curious as to whether or not that whole scene up in Statesville, did it exist prior to you guys? Because I was kind of a late bloomer to that scene. Like I started coming around and they'd already kind of been established for a while, with the kids up in Statesville. And so
Hmm.
like was that something that had been going on for a long time, or was that kind of like a newer thing?
I don't know how far back it went. I do know it pre-existed me for sure because
Okay.
that was at least by a year or two. Because I didn't know that there were local bands here,
Hmm.
and until I went to a show with a few of my friends and actually saw the Buzz. Do you remember the Buzz?
Buzz, yeah. Chip
Yeah, I
Harbin was in
mean,
that band. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, Chip and Adam Perry and Johnny Edmondson, and I didn't know that there were local punk bands. Like I'd only heard punk rock on like CDs and audio cassettes. So to
Hmm.
find out that there was actually local kids that were actually playing this kind of music, and I remember seeing the Buzz, I'm like, holy cow! Like these guys are from here, you know.
Yeah.
So and that really kind of lit a fire because I was like, man, I want to do this now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I don't know how far back it went before then, but that was probably 96, when I first saw the Buzz. I was probably 15,
Mhm.
and yeah, it kind of just from there the
Took
scene.
off, huh?
Yeah,
Right on, right on. Yeah, that Dookie album was like a gateway album for like a lot of people. I mean, I personally never got into Green Day that much, because around that time I was discovering like Rage Against the Machine and like Helmet,
yeah,
and like I almost kind of skipped punk rock, and I kind of feel bad about that, because like you got punk rock, and then you've got like hardcore, which is like the heroin version of punk rock. So like
right.
I skipped all the like prescription pills and went straight for like the heavy shit. So I guess my question would be like, what kind of was attractive to you about punk rock, and like what kind of drew you to it? Was the like aesthetic, or was it the were you like a troublemaker growing up?
No, not really. I never really was good at that. um, I think it was the combination of the energy, the aggression, and the melody. Like I have always been huge on melody. Like all the way back to when I was a child, I'd hear melody and I would play melody. And Green Day like was kind of the gateway. But then I kind of graduated from there once I heard bands like No Effects and No Use for a Name and
I was gonna
Lagwagon.
say, have you ever heard of a band called Bad Religion?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yes, I've heard of them. Descendants, yeah, and
No Use for a Name, have you ever heard of
I've once or twice I've
that?
heard the name, yes. Um, Once I heard bands like that that were really crafting these melodies that went with this kind of heavy, fast, aggressive music, I'm like, I just fell in love with it. And the harmonies, the vocal harmonies, the catchy melodies and choruses. So that's really what drew me to it, which is because it was so different from anything else, even from what I thought initially punk rock was. Just Green Day was the only thing I had to compare it to. I'm like, oh no, wait a minute, this is really different. Just the speed of it, how fast it was, fell in love with it. And yeah, I've even over the years as I've kind of ventured into other musical endeavors and experimented with different styles, like that sound is just all has always and always will be near and dear to me. Like I'm in my mid 40s now. I don't think it's ever going to go away. But
Yeah, it's weird, man, because it's like, a lot of people think it's just like a phase. And I think just about practically everybody I know from like my like hardcore travels and my experiences, like even growing up around here, almost everybody's still involved in it in some capacity, like
Yeah.
whether it be not like it may not always be playing bands, it might be, you know, booking shows, doing, shirts, doing, being a roadie or something like that. Everybody I know has like stuck with it. And that to me is an incredible thing because it's like, the efficacy of like, the reach of the music, like you're able to kind of, uh, constantly it's what am I trying to say here? You are you live it. Like you live it. You just, like the attitude, the ethos and everything and I know with you that and myself also when, not at present, but like whenever you started playing, Splitcast is very based in spiritual and faith-based lyrics.
Hmm.
How did you come to encounter God? Did you grow up in a Christian family?
Yeah. So my parents took us to church, when we were little. Um, I grew up in a family that taught the value of church and prayer. Um, it was never something that uh, I guess, well, when you're young, you don't really have the understanding of this is something I'm going to build my life around. This is more so just something that, you know, that we do that's good. And, but it doesn't become who you are, I guess, until you're older and you start to understand what that relationship actually consists of and what it actually
Sure.
means. So, as I got into be a teenager, I mean, I had a couple of years where I was, I guess, what you would say, mischievous.
Rebellious. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to be part of the kind of skateboard crowd without dabbling into some of that sometimes.
Sure. Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I think God really had his plan was clearly laid out for him, and he would steer me into where I would contact the right people at the right time. And it was actually the guys in Splitcast. After I started playing music with them, that they're like, you know what, you should probably come to church. And because for a while I hadn't really fed my spiritual life at all for several years, and that's what kind of got me back into going to church. And um, yeah, and then I would say it just kind of grew from there.
Right on. And so, with Splitcast, like, how did you guys all meet? And I mean, I know a lot of the people were like in other bands. Like, I remember Courtney, and then like, Justin was in other bands, and oh, drummer Chad.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
remember you guys were. It was like this big incestuous circle of like Statesville and like Mooresville musicians. Like, Mooresville much later, but like initially like Statesville. And so
yeah,
was that how you guys all came to meet? Or I know a lot of you guys went to school together.
yeah. So me and Chad were a couple years apart. He's 2 years older than me, but we both went to Statesville High School, and it was actually his band was called the Nifties, and Ben Wall was the guitarist and singer for that band, and Ben was getting ready to go to college. Um, so I knew of Chad. I didn't know him personally, and he was older than me. I was just kind of this weird, you know, 15-year-old kid, didn't have many friends, but I could play guitar. And somehow he found out that I could play guitar and asked if I wanted to come and play with their band. So before that, I didn't know Courtney or Nick, other than I had seen them or I'd seen Nick around the band guys because I knew he was friends with some of them, but I had not really achieved that status yet to associate with that crowd just yet.
Mhm.
Um, but that's how I met Nick and Courtney, and then they were like, by the way, our guitar player was also our singer. Can you sing? And at that point, I didn't really know because it's not really anything I'd ever attempted to do in front of anybody. But so I kind of had to learn that as I went.
Sure. I mean, you remind me the bad religion. You remind me of Greg Graffin a lot, and I just like your guys' chops were like so good back then, like I was like beyond impressed, like watching you and Justin and like Courtney just like so tight, and I'm sure you'll probably be like, we were all right, but like for me, like a 15-year-old kid as well, that's there, that's just like, you know, kind of my first exposure to any of this music. It was like mind blowing, and like with, these new releases, I noticed there was one West Broad. I was like, and anybody who knows would know what West
Yeah,
Broad is, and um, was it okay? So let me ask this question. I know you guys did like a little bit of touring and a little bit of like playing shows outside of the area and stuff. Who did you play with, and what was that like being like a Christian band? I know that a lot of Christian bands caught a lot of hell, like especially in like super like, you know, PC areas like, Greensboro or Chapel Hill or something like that. So
right.
how was that experience for you guys like playing out? Were kids and bands receptive to your message? Were they into it?
Yeah, back then, I mean, it was a different world. Things weren't nearly as polarized as they are now, or even as they have been in the last 15 years or so. So I don't feel like we really faced much, and probably a lot of the places we were playing were Christian venues. I don't remember. I mean, this was a long time ago, but we would book shows wherever anybody would book us, or we'd play where anywhere they would book us. So, but and we would always announce who we were. We would announce who we were, what we were about, that we were a Christian band, and we weren't trying to force it on them, but we just wanted to, put that out front. And I mean, I don't ever remember anybody like coming after us or having any harsh words. So, and it's not like we were out touring for months.
Right.
We were doing this through email and Yahoo Maps, basically.
Right.
And so our booking a tour was not an easy thing to do for a relatively unknown band. It was like we might have one show in Myrtle Beach, and then we'd go to Virginia, and then from there we'd come back to North Carolina, and then drive,
To Georgia.
to Concord, New Hampshire. So
Right. I don't miss that, man. Like,
yeah,
the ability to be able to like, and here's the thing too, with a lot of those situations, you take the like bands like back in the 80s and stuff like that, where you had to go to like a payphone and call a number and like use a road map and like,
yeah,
hope that, the show that was booked, like, wasn't canceled or something like that, so um I think it's a good time that we're living in right now because everything is kind of connected in that way. Though a lot of the appeal of punk rock was kind of the ruggedness of it, like the frontier
yeah,
aspect of it, where it's just like you don't know what's out there and you don't know like, how your band's gonna do or where you're gonna go or whatever. But that was like the exciting part.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Now, like what, as far as the current state of the church, how do you feel about that? Like, with everything that's going on right now, what do you think about the status of the modern Christian church?
Well, modern Christian church, I'm not even really sure what that means, to be honest with you. I I don't really, I guess I don't pay a huge amount of attention to what's going on outside of my life and my circle of influence, the people I'm responsible for. I mean, I know that as far as I know, church has gotten a lot more casual with your mega churches, and it's a lot more entertainment than it used to be.
Right.
I'm not here to condemn anybody that participates in churches like that. I don't think I will ever go to one like that, just because uh, it's not consistent with what I feel to be. I guess from a biblical standpoint of what church should be.
Mhm.
But I'm definitely, if I'd rather somebody go to church than not go to church and be exposed to have their views challenged and illuminating a need in their heart, for God. Wherever they can get that, I'm a fan of that.
Sure.
But as far as the state of the church, I mean, I know it's gone in a lot of different directions, but that it's not something that I really kind of build my life around, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we had Sean Jonas on this show, and he's a pastor, Sean Jonas from Zayo, and like, I asked him that question, and he seems to think that, the church may be kind of sacrificing some of its laurels in order to, do like a mass appeal type situation, like a mega church or something like that. Something more like, yeah, like you said, more entertainment based, Um, so I
Yeah.
guess that's my question. Do you feel like the church is maybe kind of compromising a little bit?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I agree with what he said, and because a lot of times, I mean, the gospel is an uncomfortable message, and um, so I think that, and it's really out of touch with, I guess, the modern world today. So anything you can do to sort of sweeten that a little bit or to draw people in, I guess, is the way things have gone.
Hmm.
I think you do end up sacrificing uh, legitimacy for the sake of drawing people in and kind of turning it into an entertainment
Like an
type thing.
event or something? Yeah,
Yeah, like an event.
yeah, totally. I mean, and I'm with you in that. Like, I kind of like the meat of everything, like the reading the Bible, like when I was practicing, like reading the Bible and like learning the information and stuff like that. The worship aspect to me was I was a lost on it a little bit, and that's kind of why I liked like the Christian punk bands and the Christian hardcore bands, because
Hmm.
a lot of it just didn't really speak to me, so I guess with, again, the current state of the church, we're saying it's like, they've had to kind of like do things a little bit differently. Do you think that fellowship is the most important thing, like, or do you think your relationship with God is more, it's more important to be personal, I guess you could say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely got to start there. I think a personal relationship with Christ it's where it has to start. It's got to start with you and God before I think it can branch out to anything else from there. Um, I think you have to have that relationship. The fellowship is important because I think it it helps reinforce community and being part of something. And I mean, God calls us to come together as a church. So I think you have to have both things. I think you do have to have both, but I think it has to start with you in your own heart and making putting effort into nurturing and cultivating your relationship with God. And some of those things just have to be done alone. I think. I mean, you and the Word of God, and just letting it speak to you.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that totally. I guess that was kind of my biggest problem is, and I still have a problem with like large groups and like, being involved in that kind of community. Um, Me personally, I'm kind of standoffish, so like I don't always and not like in a harsh way, but like I don't always like to engage, like I just kind of like to like stay back and observe a lot of times. But that's I think been the most difficult challenge is association with other like believers of any sort of faith, or just like with common interests and whatnot. And I guess
Right.
that would lead to my next question, that like, what do you do like outside of playing music? What do you like? What kind of keeps you busy?
Yeah. So I mean, my life is very different than it was 25 years ago when I was going to band practice 2 or 3 nights a week. Um, this really came out of nowhere. I ended up going back to school full time at the very beginning of 2021. Wanted to study to be a physician assistant. I was a paramedic for 17 years
Oh wow.
and decided I was going to go to PA school. So started started PA school in January of 2021. Graduated in May of 2023. I had not been involved in music at all um, in at least 8 years, and really that's just from about 2009 to about 2016. I was doing I wasn't performing, but I was doing a lot of writing and recording, and I was producing demos for songwriters kind of all over the country. That was a fun little side gig I had for a few years, and then really from like 2016 to 2023, I did nothing. I didn't write anything. I didn't record anything. My gear, because I was studying basically,
Hmm.
because there was a lot I had to do just to get into school. So once I got into school and got through school, when I graduated in May, I had about 4 months where I didn't have anything to do because there's a long period where all your credentials and licensing has to be processed. You can't start your job yet. So um, I got, all I'd done for the last so many years was just studying, just medicine, science. And I had basically turned off that part of me for a lot of years. And then as soon as all that kind of went away and I could think about something else again, it all just kind of came rushing back. So that's kind of where this came from. But on the days when I'm not writing punk rock songs, I am working as a physician assistant and raising 2 kids and being a husband. So really just normal stuff.
Nice,
Yeah.
man. That's awesome, man. And I'm, kind of glad that you're, you know, taking the steps to, like improve your education and do something different, and family is important too, and the older
Yeah.
I get, I'm like, sometimes the shit that I thought was important really isn't that important,
Yeah.
and, like family and things like that, tend to be, uh, you know, we don't always, for somebody like me anyway, like I don't have like an extended family, so it's not always it's not always easy for me to see from that perspective, but it seems to make a lot of people happy, and everybody just, you know, I know people that love being a dad or a mom or something like that, so I think that's a great thing that you got going on, man. I think that's awesome. And you know, as far as like the albums and whatnot, particularly the newer ones, like thematically, we talked about faith and all that. What sort of other kind of subject matters do you tackle with Splitcast?
Yeah. So, I mean, anything and everything. Um, I talk about being a dad. I talk about relationships and being a husband and how sometimes that's a not the easiest thing, but yeah, I talk about cultural type issues. I really just if I can find an interesting or creative way to discuss a topic, then that's what I try to do. I don't like just throwing random words on a page and or the lyrics are so obscure that you don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
I like it to tell a story. So
sure.
really, if it's something that I feel strongly about and I can present that in a unique way, then I'll write a song about it.
Do you typically write the music first and then the lyrics, or have you ever written lyrics like a poem or something and then put it to music?
Personally, no, that is not typically how I do it. I have done that, and really that goes back into the time when I was doing a lot of demoing for other songwriters. I might be working with a lyricist that doesn't write music, and they would send me lyrics, and I would write music to their lyrics. Um, but for me, everything usually always starts with there. Here we go again. The melody.
Hmm.
I will hear something. I might hear it in the ceiling fan. I don't know. But I will catch something and it'll be in my head. And I will start writing the song in my head. And I'll already know, like, okay, the guitars are going to do this, and then the drum's going to do that right there, and I think the bass will do this, and I'll have a melody that I like. The vocals are going to have this melody. I don't know what the words are yet, but I know that right here needs to be a 3-syllable word because that fits really good right there as a 3-syllable word. So that's kind of how the process comes together with me. I will pretty much write everything musically first, and then lyrics come after.
Okay, right on. Um, you don't have anybody playing with you now, do you? It's just you, right?
Right now, it is just me. That's
Okay.
correct.
Any plans to play live?
um, yes, I probably as an acoustic act.
Oh,
I've got I've got you remember Brian Sherrill
Of
from?
course, yeah, and I
Yeah,
noticed he was on one of the tracks, and I'd
yeah,
never heard Brian. Everybody's like, "Dude, Brian can growl," and I was like, "Really? Little Brian?" And they were like, "Yeah," and I was like I heard him, and I was like, "Whoa." I was like,
yeah.
Why didn't he do more of this?" You know?
Yeah, so I mean, he and I have been best friends for probably the last 15 years at least.
Nice.
We were in Love Driven Fury together back in the early 2000s, and then our families just kind of grew up together. Our wives are best friends, our kids are best friends, so we do life with them.
Nice.
Me and Brian lead worship at church, so yeah, and Brian, he was the lead vocalist for Love Driven Fury, which was the band that we were in after Splitcast for me and after Stronghold for him.
Right.
Um, and
I
yeah,
never heard that band. I was away whenever
okay.
the years you were talking about. What
Yeah, that was probably 2004 to 2007 or 8.
Okay.
We made one EP and then pretty much quit like right after we put it out. It was a weird strategy.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, I've got Brian on there. Just I mean, he's a man of many talents himself. Like he can do a lot more than just scream, and I'm going to try to bring that out in the next Splitcast
Yeah, I heard
project.
he was a good singer too.
He's an
Like
excellent singer. Yeah,
yeah.
he's the. I mean, he leads most of the worship songs
Oh, that's awesome.
when we sing at church, and I'll chime in, once or so. But yeah, he's actually a much stronger vocalist, I think. From just it's very natural. I feel like I had to teach myself. I didn't really know how to sing. I was just trying to emulate other bands that I was listening to. But he has a really natural gift.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you listen to the Love Driven Fury, you can find. I think it's on streamers.
Okay.
You can hear him.
I'll have to check it
Um,
out.
but we've actually been working on an acoustic set for Splitcast, just the
Oh,
two
cool.
of us. Yeah, so I,
Nice.
I think that will happen eventually. I'm not sure when, but as far as a full band performance, me and the guys, we've stayed in touch through this whole thing because I got their blessing to use the name. I wasn't going to put anything out under the name Splitcast unless I had their blessing to do it.
Sure.
And it's really done. It's been great because I mean that group chat is live. It's been for a year now. It hasn't stopped.
You
So
do like a group chat and
yeah, with just
nice.
the old Splitcast guys. And every time I write something new, they're usually the first ones that hear it. I'm like, guys, what do you think about this?
Mhm.
We actually co-wrote one of the songs on the new record, Stand, the last track on the record. That's the first song in 23 years that we all wrote on together. We
Wow.
passed lyrical ideas back and forth, and then I kind of compiled it and made the song with it. But yeah, I mean, we've toyed with the idea over the years about trying to at least get back in the same room together and jam. It's just never happened. I mean, all these guys have been out of music for years and years and years. So
Mm.
it's a pipe dream, but I'm not sure if it's ever going to be realistic.
Sure, sure. I mean, and like as we get older, getting on the road sometimes gets way harder, and like, your priorities change. You have a family. I see, here's the thing. I could drop everything right now. Somebody's like, go on tour with us. I'm like, let's go, but like I almost don't want that, I am envious of my friends that are living the family life, man. Like
Yeah,
I would really love that someday. I don't know, but like, I think that as we get older, yeah, our priorities change. We don't um things just really aren't as important to us that things that used to be important to us. Like you start to get older and you're like, none of this really matters, like none of this is
yeah,
important. And why are we why do you think society prioritizes superficiality, I guess you could say, versus I mean, like spirituality and things like that? Because you've got this culture of people that are, doing it for the gram or doing it for the views and stuff like that, and of little substance. So why do you think superficiality, like in terms of media and stuff, triumphs over like spiritual themes?
yeah, absolutely. I think it really speaks to our kind of nature as humans. We need gratification. We need our senses stimulated. So, and if inside, I mean, I think in all of us there is a deep need for a spiritual relationship or connection with our Creator. But when we don't recognize that, or when we turn away from that, we're going to fill that space with something else. Like, we are essentially made to worship, and if we're not worshiping God or another religious figure, then we're going to worship something else, whether it's our even our families or our activities, our hobbies, what we do, things that stimulate us. And the problem is that the superficial type things can never really provide any true satisfaction, I don't think. So it's like you're always looking for the next thing,
Right.
until, and speaking of what you were just talking about earlier, how you start to realize that certain things aren't as important as you're getting older. I feel silly doing this now. At 43, I didn't really plan on any of this. I mean, my life is really about other things now. But
Yeah.
when this came back, and I started getting these opportunities to come on podcasts, and it's kind of me living out something I never got to do when I was younger.
Sure.
But at the same time, I know what my role is. I mean, my role right now is to be a husband and a dad. And the
Sure.
fact that I'm getting to do this, and I'm getting to share my talents with the world, and being able to do fun things like this. I mean, that's a blessing, but that's not something that I'm really seeking like spiritual fulfillment from.
Yeah. I mean, that's good too. I was just thinking about the other day. I was like, you know, it could all be for naught. Like you look at like famous actors back in the day from the 30s or something. Like take like Clark Gable. Do you think any kid nowadays knows who Clark Gable is? Like probably not. And so the things that I prioritized in my life, like I mean, even I feel silly doing this too, like I feel silly wearing Star Trek shirts, and I'm like, I could just go and get a straight job and shave and like wear like a polo button up and stuff like that, and I could really excel at that. I know that I could. I don't like it though, I don't like that world,
No,
and
I hear
so
you. Yeah.
it's nice to be able to, but again, there's people that have to live in a corporate world or have to do stuff like that, so it's nice to be able to have something that you enjoy, that kind of harkens you back to that period of where you didn't have to do any of that stuff, so I
Yeah.
don't think that's like a terrible thing necessarily.
It's not a terrible thing for sure. I mean, it's a good thing. It just feels weird because I've not really, I didn't really plan on anything like this. I mean, I was just like, I wonder if I can still write punk rock songs. And then, a year later, I've got an EP and an album, and I'm doing podcasts, and it just feels kind of weird. But yeah, it's been fun nonetheless.
Yeah, and I mean, if anything, that's the biggest takeaway, it's like of all the stuff that I'm doing right now, I just want to have fun, man. I just,
Yeah.
it's pretty low priority. It's more like, you know, let's just do it when we can type thing, and just keep consistent at it. And that seems to be the biggest thing today with like a lot of musicians is like consistency. And so do you think you'll continue to put out albums, or was this just kind of a one-off thing?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't sure after I finished the EP if I was going to go any further after that. I mean, the EP had a fairly modest response. Nobody knew who Splitcast was outside of about 30 people in Statesville. Um, but the creativity aspect of it, I get the songs just kind of kept coming, and now it's like once I started that, now it's kind of hard to shut it back off, and uh, so I don't know what's going to happen next. I wasn't really planning on the Shadows on the Street LP, but it happened, and I'm still writing, and I'm working on new songs now. So I will keep doing this as long as it's not causing like a massive interference in any other area of my life.
Sure.
But I'm not really sure where it goes. I mean, I don't know if I'm writing another EP or an album or a single. I don't know. I'm writing when I have time to write, and it's been fun.
Nice, man. Now, as far as like, like modern media and modern bands and whatnot, who kind of like who do you think is like coming up in the world as far? Do you listen to a lot of new punk rock?
Um, I more so now that I've kind of been back in it. I mean, like I said, there were years when I really wasn't doing much of anything in music. I would still listen to the kind of the same records that I listened to when I was 17.
Isn't that crazy?
Um, but since then, I mean, even just the other bands on People of Punk Rock that I've kind of touched base with and been introduced to and started to develop relationships with, like Bridge the Gap is a band that reached out. You know, their lead singer reached out to me and just wanted to get to know me, and he's been like super helpful as far as trying to help me navigate this.
Nice.
So I really like their stuff is really good. Some of the other People of Punk Rock bands like Colors Fade, Downstater, and I don't know who's up and coming or who's on their way to doing big things, but there's a lot of really good stuff out there that you just don't even know exists unless you go and find it.
Yeah, definitely. What as far as like, outside of music and stuff is like media, do you read? What have you been watching? What do you got?
Yeah, I'm not a huge reader. I did for several years, probably this, I don't know, 15 years ago, I got into like reading novels and things like that. But since then, like I really struggle to finish a book. I can start a book, but I don't know. Just I guess it's because my my work schedule is pretty busy. We're pretty busy with the kids. When I do have some time to just like be silent or be quiet, um, I will play guitar or do something music. But I mean, I try to make it a point to read my Bible in the mornings, and as long as that's the first thing that I do, it's not necessarily the thing that I spend the most time on throughout my day, but if it's the first thing that I do, I think that I try to prioritize that. But my wife, I mean, she reads like a book a week, and
Wow.
she has a stack this high sitting next to the bed. I just can't do it. I don't really consume a lot of media. I'm not on like X, scrolling all day long and really getting all. I try not to really get too involved in that. Like I look at the things that I need to just to kind of keep up to date with things that are happening, but I don't really let it consume my life.
You're way better off. Let me tell you, because
Yeah,
like
yeah,
sometimes I don't know how to put it down, and the only reason I have it is for exactly like you said, to just get on here and kind of like check things every once in a while. But I get sucked into it, man. Like just the like mundane stuff, like just
yeah.
lame stuff that is just out there just to generate views and clicks. Like, you ever
Right.
watch those like zit popping videos? You ever see those?
Yes, I've seen them. Yeah,
Oh, I don't know what it is about him. I'm just like fascinated by him, man. And it's like such a waste of time, It's like so like such like bull, man.
yeah. You should come to
And
the ER, and I'll let you hang out while I'm draining an abscess on somebody. You'd love it.
oh god, no. So you actually have to do that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, dude. That's crazy.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
now wait, let's go back to that. Like what's a crazy like experience that you had as an EMT? Like I don't know if this is like subject matter that's too heavy to get into, but like,
Hmm.
what's like cuz I couldn't do that line of work. There's no way.
Yeah. So I did that for 17 years full time. And gosh, there's one that always kind of sticks out, and it was pretty early on in my career. I think I was still in training actually. I was a new paramedic, but I was still like doing my training time on the truck, and there was a traffic accident where a young female had been thrown out of the vehicle, and
Ooh.
then the vehicle rolled on top of her and
Oh,
pinned her into a large tree.
Jesus.
Yeah, and it just you get into something like that, and you're like, this is a hopeless situation. Like, what? I don't know what to do with this.
Right.
Um,
She was
and I
alive.
remember, yeah, and
Ooh.
She was alive, yeah, and my trainer that I was working with, he was like, "All right, I'll be over here if you need anything." I'm like, "Are you
Oh
kidding
God.
me?"
Yeah.
So, and it's, obviously this is a full scale operation. You've got fire, you've got rescue, you've got law enforcement. I mean, it's not just us.
Sure.
But that was a pretty intense one for a young medic, and I had to crawl down in there under the tree to get to her to start an IV, and as we were getting her out, and um, yeah, I mean, it didn't end well,
Yeah.
but we did everything that we could, and I'll always remember that one just because it was like the first major one that I was kind of heavily involved in as a provider on the
Did
scene.
that ever wear on you?
Um, this is gonna sound bad, but doing that line of work, it kind of makes you emotionally detached,
Sure.
because you'll never make it. You'll never make it in that line of work if you don't know how to emotionally detach from something like that.
Yeah.
So, and it's not to say that you don't. It's not to say that you don't treat that person with compassion, but you can't wear it.
Right.
So you can have compassion without necessarily feeling empathy,
Mhm.
which there's a difference. So if you wear everybody's pain and you're one of those people that emotionally invests in every situation, you'll never make it. You'll burn out
Yeah.
in a year.
Yep.
So I would say no. There are certain situations that happen with kids and things that would make me think of my kids at home, and
Ooh.
but you can't dwell on it. It makes you thankful for what you have and what you don't have. Sometimes even
Sure.
more so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt, man. I don't think I'd be able to do it. It would just I saw somebody get hit by a on a motorcycle one time, and I instantly went into shock. Like it
Yeah.
was just too much for my brain to process at that time, And so,
Right.
and I commend you, man. Like that's a hard, thankless job almost.
Yeah. Sometimes. Yeah.
So one thing as far as like we've talked about goals, like as far as with music and stuff, you're not sure if you want to do like another album or something like that. And then what other sort of goals do you have, like in music and in life?
Um. Yeah. So music. I I guess I'm kind of living it right now because I never even, this always was the goal, was
Mm.
was to put out records, and if it wasn't for this being 2024 and just is connected as everything is, I think like you referenced earlier, like this would have never happened because I wouldn't have ever really just put myself out there like this. I mean, I'm an introvert, so just the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you right now is saying something because
Right.
this is
I'm
not
only an
some
extrovert doing this, man.
yeah, this is not something I would normally do.
Sure.
But you know, in life in general, I mean, I'm trying to keep the things that I do well. I'm trying to maximize those, and the things that I suck at, I'm trying to get a little bit better at. So,
I hear you.
I'm 1 year into my career as a PA now, and that means on most days I feel like the real thing, but there's still plenty to learn. It's a different job than what I did before, and on the home front, I mean, my kids are on the brink of being teenagers. They're not teenagers yet. I
Uh-oh.
have a soon to be 11-year-old, and then my son is getting ready to turn 13 in a couple of
Mm.
months. So I'm gonna have a teenager in October.
Nice.
So that's I'm sure that's going to bring some new challenges that I've not had to deal with yet.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, I just want to be, who they need me to be,
Sure.
and I'm in uncharted territory as far as raising teenagers. Never done that before, um, but I have some good people to lean on in the process. But
Well, if they're anything like me, you'll be in for a fun time. I was a hellion, man. I couldn't do it, but that's cool, man. That's really awesome. And yeah, I could see where that would be a challenge. I don't, I God bless you guys for like doing that. I can barely take care of myself sometimes, so I envy you guys for having the skill set to be able to raise children. I don't have that yet.
Well, it's something you learn as you go. I mean, I don't you can't study for it. Yeah, you can
Right.
try, but yeah,
Yeah, when my parents, even when I was 18, they're like, "We're still trying to figure this shit out." I was
yeah,
like, "Great,
exactly.
okay, cool." Um, now, I guess one more thing to say would be like, do you have any like parting words of wisdom? Do you have any sort of advice for people, as far as in music, maybe spirituality, life? Do you have any sage words of wisdom?
Sage words of wisdom. Yeah. I would say if you're a musician and you're out there and you're not sure um, if what you have is good enough or marketable or whatever enough, I would encourage you to just give it a shot. Give it a try. Um, I guess from so I never really had the opportunity to put myself out in front of people, nor did I really have the drive to do that as a younger musician. I was kind of happy to stay behind the scenes all those years I was in songwriting, but
Sure.
I mean, you never really know what you're capable of doing until you have the opportunity to do it.
Sure.
So whatever your goal is in life, get 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 comfortable being uncomfortable, I guess is the words of wisdom there.
Mm,
If you're continually training yourself to do hard things, then when you actually have to do hard things in life, then you're like, okay, I've felt this way before and I overcame it.
sure. Yeah.
um, that translates, I think, also into a spiritual discipline. It's not easy to wake yourself up at 4:30 in the morning so you can have 30 minutes to sit and read the Bible and just kind of let it wash over you for a little while.
Sure.
Um, it's not easy to uh, you know sort of dedicate your life to something outside of yourself, because we're so visceral and we're so physical. It's hard to imagine satisfaction or fulfillment coming in something that you can't touch or feel.
Right.
um, so I guess that works. Get comfortable being
Okay.
uncomfortable. There you go.
Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Okay. Yeah. Wait, let me ask you this question though. What if people are trying to make you feel uncomfortable?
If people are trying to make me feel uncomfortable,
You walk
uh,
away. Or do you
yeah,
or do you try to be say like, well, this is an uncomfortable situation. I guess I should wallow or not wallow in it, but bask in it or something.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I try to not let anybody really get to me that bad. Nothing really upsets me that much. But
You're lucky. I mean, I praise you for that. Like I said, I mean, if I could learn to turn down the anger dial a little bit and be a little more placid and whatnot,
yeah.
that would be great. But
That's
man,
probably not. Some of that's probably turning a blind eye to some things. Like, if you know that something that you're engaging in is doing nothing but making your blood pressure go up, then maybe it's time to put it down.
and you said you don't go on a lot of the social media outlets.
Right.
That's why I don't, because it's
Yeah.
like I know what's going on. It pisses me off. I don't have to bask in it and live in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, dude, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Like, this has been amazing. And I think it's, when I heard, like I said, when I heard you guys pick back up again, I was like, whoa. And then I was like, and Justin was like, no, it's really good, man. And I was like, is it? And he goes, yeah. And I said, okay. And then I checked, I was like, Justin will not steer you wrong.
That's
So,
true. That's true.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you think you'd ever play with him again?
Oh, I mean, I haven't seen him in probably close to 20 years. I'm not sure. I mean, we've texted back and forth a few times. I still love the guy. Like, he's literally one of my favorite people.
Yeah.
I would love to hang out with him again.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
yeah, I haven't seen him in so long.
he's man, well, we work together like with this project and I barely see him now, so yeah, I would like to see him too. Justin, let's hang out, man.
That's right.
But well, dude, yeah, thanks. Like I said, I mean, everything is is going well for you, it sounds like. And, I hope you guys continue to put out music, and I hope people continue to be exposed to it and receptive to it. Cause, I think that's great. And I think you got a good message, and, you're doing stuff, man, and you got a family, and that's awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Well, I'll be sure to post all your lyrics, all your links to all your uh, streaming media outlets and whatnot, so people can hear you guys. Um, I have a merch company, and I didn't even put the banner up, and I feel like an idiot. But it's hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use the code 20 for 20% off your entire order. And I want to go ahead and throw up some samples here so you guys can see them. We got the here's the Steve McQueen Bullet Mock. We got the Hell's Heart Black Flag. We got Psycho 2. We got Scream Tatum, and we got Scream Randy. All shirts right now are 20% off. Like I said, Bella Canvas, soft, really nice. And I'll get you one, Greg. I think you'll like them. But
Awesome.
and everybody, like I said, thanks for checking us out, and be sure to check out Splitcast on all their streaming outlets. And everybody, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'm gonna play a little merch promo in the outro. And once again, Greg Shields, thanks so much, dude.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, guys, namaste. God bless. Be good.